So, I mean, to back up further, I had signs and symptoms that there was something wrong with me starting at age 6. But I was also a very precocious kid, an actor, dramatic, loved to perform, and so it was hard for the adults in my life to take it seriously when I had all these symptoms. It just kind of seemed like there was always something wrong with me, which
Of
now we know
course.
there is. But
Clearly.
and
I
it took
mean, your acting skill must have been amazing then.
my acting was so good.
Practicing for your role on a soap opera or something.
I should be in Grey's Anatomy for sure. I'm great at screaming in pain. I've done it a lot. I was like, if that means I should be in the psych ward, then fine, because, maybe that is the place for me right now because this is driving me crazy. Like, I am going crazy because I'm in so much constant pain and agony, and everyone is looking at me like I'm a psychopath. And so I'm like feeling so good. I'm like, oh my God, I have a diagnosis. Like, this is all I've wanted my whole life. I knew it. There was something wrong with
Yeah.
me. I was like validated, vindicated. And then I put my little thumbs in Google, search fibromyalgia, and it's like no treatments, no cure, nothing. Good luck. So I went through this period, and I was in therapy for all of this. And I think that's important because I'm just a huge advocate for therapy in general. And I also think it's important that I note before any of this started, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety when I was 16, and then it was corrected to bipolar 2 when I was 18. And I think to the average person, like I live at a level of pain where the average person would be in the ER, right? Like that would be so it makes sense that the anxiety went along with it, but it took me a while to separate the two and be like, oh, I'm anxious because I'm in pain. I'm not like, and medication. I've been on medication since I was 16, and I have no shame in saying that. Like, I think if you need medication to survive, then you should take it. And I have tried many times to not be on medication, and let me tell you, I would not survive if I was not on medication. So it's kind of crazy because getting that diagnosis, it saved my life, but it also ended the life that I knew and started a different one. It was an uphill battle for like 2 or 3 years from that period where I had the concussion, mono, C. diff, everything to the diagnosis. There was like a 3-year gap there where I was just searching for answers and always in the
Hmm.
doctor, in the hospital, and in this uphill battle where I was still a full-time student. I was still trying to be active in theater department productions. I was a budding director in the theater department. I was chosen to direct my own show. Like, all these things were happening that should have been so amazing, and I was just one by one constantly letting people down, constantly having to bail, to drop out, to be not there at the last moment. And I got fired from jobs.
Hmm.
I had to drop out of classes. I had to go down to being a part-time student. And it was just like slowly chipping away at all the things that made me who I am. They just started to fall away. And so by the time I was diagnosed, I really did feel like a shell of a person. The pain that I associate with fibromyalgia is that corset of pain, cavity, fire feeling. And that is like runs through my body tip to tip. Like, it doesn't matter if I have an acute injury, it is just there. And it gets worse with stress, with eating bad foods, with obviously if I hurt myself. And unfortunately, now people who are in medical school now and who have been in medical school for like the past 10 years or so have a better understanding. But if I show up to a doctor's office and my doctor is 60 to 70 years old, I will likely leave because that doctor will have learned about fibro as this catch-all hysterical woman.
Is spilling coffee a symptom of fibromyalgia?
Yes, over 6 months. So in that sense, right now, I would be like, oh yeah, get rid of either fibro or EDS because I have the bipolar under control. But I'm
Hmm.
like thinking back to when I wasn't medicated or when I was having a really hard time keeping on track with my medication. Honestly, what really, really changed the game with that was moving back in with my parents as an adult and being treated like a child because I needed that. I needed to be babied, I needed to be like taught like a child how to take care of myself, baby steps, like how wake up and brush your teeth, shower at this time, eat 3 meals a day, like basic stuff that I really, really needed help with. A lot of people think because they see me like somewhat regularly, or if they've seen me a few times and I always seem fine when they see me, that I'm fine. What they don't see is that I go out like maybe twice a week, maybe 3 times a week of my house. Like when you see me out, it's because I'm well enough to be at my best. And if I'm not at my best, I don't go out.
Hello, welcome to my podcast, to my one Joe Seuss. I'm Joe Seuss. I'll be giving a mic to MB. MB is an actress, model, content creator, life coach, and lifetime lover of all things creative, and secret of an improv master in a few years. So I'm gonna ask you about some questions, and you can tell me if you feel like this. Are you ready?
Okay, ready.
Do you feel like you are wearing a corset, but the corset full of pain?
Yes.
Do you feel you got in a sunburn, but instead of the sun, it was fire?
Yes.
Do you feel like you have a cavity, but it's in your skin and it's everywhere?
Yeah, where are you getting these? These are so smart.
I don't know. I'm just reading stuff. Would you say it's like a cold wind blowing over your cavity?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. That's smart.
Do you feel flattened by a truck?
Always. Trucks love
Do
me.
you feel like a hangover and being nauseous and your body's aching?
Yeah, like a hangover and the flu.
Yep, and then, so that's crazy because I think you got fibromyalgia, right?
No way, do I? Do I really?
Yeah, so I have here, like, talked to your doctor, and you got diagnosed in 27 while you were in school, then you got a virus, and shit just went downhill, so let's start from there.
Yeah, so I got diagnosed in 2017. I was 21, I think, and I
Bad
basically
timing.
yeah. I was in college, and so I mean, to back up further, I had signs and symptoms that there was something wrong with me starting at age 6. But I was also a very precocious kid, an actor, dramatic, loved to perform, and so it was hard for the adults in my life to take it seriously when I had all these symptoms. It just kind of seemed like there was always something wrong with me, which now we know there is. But
Clearly.
but growing up, it was just like the annoying thing, and like, oh, why do you need so much attention? Like, why does it always have to be about you? And I just felt very kind of like trapped in a body that looked fine, that wasn't. But it was when I got to college and I got a concussion, and then I got mono. Yeah, then I got mono, which turned into chronic mono. So I had that for 9 months. And then I got another concussion.
Did you give birth after that?
Second concussion, and then I got C. diff, which I don't know. Do you know what C. diff is?
No.
It's an intestinal infection that is super contagious and can be fatal if you don't catch it. And my doctors didn't catch it. They thought I was faking appendicitis. So they sent me home and put in my file that I'm like a drug seeker. And
your acting skills must have been amazing then.
My acting was so good.
Practicing for your role on a soap opera or something?
I should be in Grey's Anatomy for sure. I'm great at screaming in pain. I've done it a lot. But yeah, so after that, I was really just like KO'd. My gut was trashed. I couldn't digest anything. I could barely eat. I was severely underweight. I was so weak that I had to use a wheelchair. I couldn't hold myself up. I, most of the time in my apartment, got around by army crawling because it was the easiest way. So that was just a big period of my life where I was stuck. I couldn't go to classes, but I was in college and I was living in Boston. I went to Boston College. And so I was just kind of stuck there, and I didn't have a support system. I didn't have, people who were helping me try to figure it out. So I was just sick all the time thinking, oh my God, I must have a brain tumor. Like something is crazy wrong with me and no one's listening. So I went to the ER time after time for these symptoms, and they would always just send me home or try to commit me to the psych ward, which was super fun. But so eventually I was kind of at my limit, and I was like, if I don't get a diagnosis after this last round of tests, then because I have tried everything at this point, like every test, every lab, everything I could think of, everything my doctors could think of, everything the people in the ER could think of, like it had been tried, it had been tested, and I was seemingly fine. But I clearly was not fine in any way. I had zero quality of life. Like I could not do anything. So I was at my wit's end. I was like, I'm giving up. Like if I don't get a diagnosis soon, I don't want this life. This is not for me. I'm good. And I was like, if that means I should be in the psych ward, then fine, because, maybe that is the place for me right now, because this is driving me crazy. Like I am going crazy because I'm in so much constant pain and agony, and everyone is looking at me like I'm a psychopath, which is not a fun situation to be in when you're not psychotic. You're like, no, I'm very rational right now. I'm perfectly good. So it was actually while I was in the hospital waiting for a bed in the psych ward that I got the call from my doctor that my tests had come back inconclusive for Lyme disease. And I was like, this was like, I'd already been tested for Lyme, but this was like a more invasive test. It was a more specific test, whatever. And I guess there's multiple tests. I'm not sure. I'm not super familiar with Lyme because it was later.
You could be lying to me. I don't know.
I don't know. So I was diagnosed with chronic Lyme. I went to a Lyme specialist, and he was the first doctor who like sat me down, went through my entire medical history with me, gave me a full exam. He was in that room with me for almost 2 hours, which is like the most time a doctor has ever spent with me. And at the end of the session, he was like, yeah, you have fibromyalgia. And I was like, the fuck is that, dude? Like, I've never heard of that. That sounds terrible. And he was like, well, yeah. He was like, okay, so like, go home, do some research and call me, and, we'll figure out a plan and whatever. And so I'm like feeling so good. I'm like, oh my God, I have a diagnosis. Like, this is all I've wanted my whole life. I knew it. There was something wrong with me. I was like validated, vindicated. And then I put my little thumbs in Google, search fibromyalgia, and it's like no treatments, no cure, nothing, good luck. So that's my diagnosis story.
So like let's go on to the next step. So like you Googled, I'm sure you Google a lot of things, but Google fibromyalgia. So like seeing that there is nothing that could help you, so like did you just like start drinking coffee, I guess, to help?
So I went through this period, and I was in therapy for all of this. And I think that's important because I'm just a huge advocate for therapy in general. And I also think it's important that I note, before any of this started, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety when I was 16, and then it was corrected to bipolar 2 when I was 18. So 16 depression, anxiety, 18 bipolar, 21 fibromyalgia, and then 26.
It's crazy that you talk about anxiety because you talked about improv, and improv is like one of the most anxiety-prone activities you can do on a planet, and there you are going to do it.
I'm a big proponent of opposite action. I feel like the things that you most don't want to do are the things that you should be probably doing. And I had incredible stage fright as a kid. Like I was they had to hold the curtain for me once when I was the lead in a play in 5th grade because I was pooping.
Oh my God.
Like I could not stop pooping. I was like, I don't know what to do. I have to be there to open the show and I am stuck in the bathroom. But yeah, so that was just years and years of pushing myself to be on stage as much as possible until I was like, this is my home now. And now I feel more like myself on stage than I do like off stage, which is weird.
I mean, I think just based on my experience, because everyone has anxiety differently, but like, I think it's just a feeling, and it's like almost an unwarranted feeling, but like something you can just overcome. Like, you know, it's not like it's not like a door that's stopping you. It's just like to keep moving forward, and it's like most of the time it will be fine.
Yeah.
Like you going on
It's
stage, it's not
really
like you're gonna get shot.
it's your own like self holding you back in those situations. It's not like there was an
Exactly.
actual danger for me being on stage. Like, what's the worst that could
Yeah.
happen? Someone laughs or like thinks I'm silly or,
Hmm.
thinks I'm dumb. Like, okay, good for you. Why does that
Yeah.
affect
I mean,
you?
it's always like I kind of it's kind of between for every guest. It's like the minute before a guest shows up, but like anxiety
Yeah, that
rises
makes
up really fast, and then after like the first like hello, it's like totally fine. It's like why am I
yeah.
freaking out? Even though you'll be like my 100th guest ish, I'm still
Yeah,
freaking out.
you've
I'm
done
like
this a
why?
lot.
Like, but like yeah, I think it is a feeling, and I kind of I think it's also the more you do it, the less the feeling it is. So like now you'll see me like I'm naked on my Instagram now, and I
Yeah.
show my butt all the time on my YouTube channel, and I'm just showing off. And it's like it feels so liberating to like walk around naked and just show it off. It's like awesome. Let's keep doing this. Like, how far can I go with this?
Yeah. Yeah, really push those boundaries.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean it's YOLO. But let's talk about you because it's about you. So like so you were talking about you were diagnosed with bipolar and depression at 18. So like what?
yeah, so I
And
was, and I think that that was a part of the problem, which is why I kept getting pushed to the psych ward and pushed over. There were always mental health professionals being called in whenever I was in the ER, and I
hmm
think that was because I had bipolar in my chart, which was frustrating because I saw them as separate issues, and I still do. Unfortunately, fibro does affect your mood in a huge way.
hmm
But I believe truly that every chronic illness is very affected by your mood. I think the way that your
hmm
body feels in general is very affected by your mood. And like I'm just a huge believer in the mind body connection. I study it. I am fascinated by it. And I think we have a lot more control than we think we do. But I didn't obviously know any of that going into it. So
hmm
when I was, having these awful pain moments, a lot of the
hmm
times I would have a panic attack at the same time that I was going through it because I didn't know what was going on and it would feel like an emergency to me. And I think to the average person, like I live at a level of pain where the average person would be in the ER, right? Like that would be so it makes sense that the anxiety went along with it. But it took me a while to separate the two and be like, oh, I'm anxious because I'm in pain. I'm not like having a fucking neurotic breakdown. Like I can like handle this. It's just like these two things are going on and being in this much pain makes me feel crazy. But
Yeah,
yeah, so
you were able to separate kind of like the two entities of it, and can
yeah,
like pinpoint what is what.
yeah, and be like, this is my actual physical pain, and this is like my emotional, mental, what I'm going through. And it was a long process, but that's why I'm like therapy, therapy, and medication. I've been on medication since I was 16, and I have no shame in saying that. Like, I think if you need medication to survive, then you should take it. And I have tried many times to not be on medication. And let me tell you, I would not survive if I was not on medication. So it's important that
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Cheers to science.
Science.
So
Yeah.
that when you got diagnosed with fibromyalgia, so what that I mean, it's a relief. I can say that the relief because now you have like a reason for your pain, but also not a relief because there's no treatment to it. But like, were you relieved in a sense that like when you went back to therapy and you're like, hey, you got the new diagnosis, and you almost, I guess, started a whole new journey of like separating the two entities.
It's it's kind of crazy because getting that diagnosis, it saved my life, but it also ended the life that I knew and started a different one.
When it is when you went from Mary Beth to MB.
Actually, yes. It wasn't right at the same time, but I did go through a bit of an identity crisis because I
Mm-hmm.
mean, when you think about it, like I literally spent my entire life working towards the goal of being an actor. I started dance classes when I was 2 years old. I started acting classes when I was 6. I was in singing lessons by 12. And then I went to
Are you sure you have anxiety? Because like you're doing all these things that like so anxiety.
this is the thing is like, yeah, but this is my passion. This is what I felt comfortable doing. Like for me, anxiety was being told to kick a ball. I was like, panic attack immediately. Throwing, no. I'm goodbye. I'm out. Like no. Gym class, goodbye. But these things I loved, and I loved getting to be other people and to tell stories and to just jump into someone else's brain. And I went to a special high school for acting, and then I went to college and majored in acting, and then it
Yeah,
was
like I have here you were Connecticut born, London raised, Boston school, and then a resident in Florida.
yeah,
That's so totally four totally
totally
unique
different.
locations.
Yes, yeah. So I also just because of my dad's job, we moved around a lot. So that's kind of why that happened. But the Boston was, I chose to go to boarding school for acting instead of staying with my parents in London, which I could have done and that would have been great too. But I chose to focus on acting instead of as much academics. That was what was important to me. And that's why it was such a big deal when I was diagnosed because I could feel myself and it was an uphill battle for like 2 or 3 years from that period where I had the concussion, mono, C. diff, everything to the diagnosis. There was like a 3 year gap there where I was just searching for answers and always in the doctor, in the hospital, and in this uphill battle where I was still a full-time student. I was still trying to be active in theater department productions. I was a budding director in the theater department. I was chosen to direct my own show. Like all these things were happening that should have been so amazing. And I was just one by one, constantly letting people down, constantly having to bail, to drop out, to, be not there at the last moment. And I got fired from jobs. I, I had to drop out of classes. I had to go down to being a part-time student. And it was just like slowly chipping away at all the things that made me who I am. They just started to fall away. And so by the time I was diagnosed, I really did feel like a shell of a person. And I needed to like start to rebuild after that and be like, okay, so what is really important to me? Because realistically, as a human adult with fibromyalgia, there's no way from the way I felt then and the way I feel now. I don't know, maybe someday, but from this experience, no way that I would be able to do 8 shows a week on Broadway, like dancing, singing, acting. There's just no way that would be feasible for me in my physical condition. And that is all I ever wanted. And so that was a big, hard pill to swallow. That pill got stuck for a long time because that's life-changing. And it changed everything. Having to switch my focus and be like, can I still do this? Is there a way that I can still do this? And I hung on to it for a long, long time and was in denial for a long time and really thought I could get better for a long time. And I also had, my family behind me who they were struggling because they had ignored and invalidated my physical issues for so long, and then them finding out that, oh, she has this like big problem, and if maybe we had noticed it much earlier, she would have had a very different life and like wouldn't be in such a bad place. Because the problem is, because I was such an active kid and a dancer and I was always hurting myself, by the time I got diagnosed, I'd already broken my back, my wrist, dislocated everything. I had physical therapy in almost everywhere in my body at that point. Like my body has already been through the ringer because it wasn't built to do the life that I was doing. I'm not an abled person, and I was living an abled life, and I was being pushed by everyone around me to continue that abled life no matter what. And if I couldn't, it was somehow a personal failing. So my family trying to reckon with that, I guess, and me trying to forgive them because I did have a lot of resentment. And now, because of therapy, which is a godsend. And because of, working on ourselves, working with each other, communicating, I have the best relationship with my parents now, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. But it took a long time, and that's why I felt inclined to start life coaching, start helping other people, because I was like, I had to go through this alone. I really did. Those 3 years while I was searching for answers, my childhood when I was being told nothing was wrong with me and I knew there was. And then when I found out I had fibro and that there wasn't a cure. And so I had to just start figuring out treatments, a way that I could live with this thing that is super hard to live with. And I was doing all of that by myself. I mean, my parents eventually were there and they stepped in, and that was great. But I didn't want anyone to have to do that alone and be so in the dark. And, when I was looking online, like people with, and then like all of my symptoms, it's not that easy to find. And so I wanted to make it accessible to people and just, Google fibromyalgia. I want to pop up, I want to be able to explain things, or like, I want it to be easier for people. And I want people to know that there is a way and there are people there who will help you through it, and that you're not fucking crazy for feeling and knowing that something is wrong with you. Like, you know your body best. And if everyone around you is like, you are totally fine, but you're not, keep digging for an answer, because you know your body best. And the other thing that I was going to say was,
well, I'll help you out. So, like, you were talking about that you broke your back and like your wrist and stuff, but you didn't mention it. But I'll mention it. You also have Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome that this allows your joint to be allowed to joint. It moves freely and can go out of place. So, like, when did that come all into play? Because that's a whole nother mind fuck of a disease too, which is a more physical disease than fibro, which is more of a it affects the nervous system, but it's more like it's not mental, but kind of mental in a way. If that makes sense.
It's physiological. So it's like not
Yeah.
not as much, it's not your physical like things popping in and out, but it's like overall pain that is controlled by the mind, but your mind isn't like making it up. It's not creating it. It's just that your pain signals are firing incorrectly. You basically, the sensation of pain is way higher than it should be in the average person. So that made
So
sense.
kind of like the word to disease to combine.
Yeah.
You're like a shitty Pokemon or something.
Yes. So finding out I had fibro, and the 5 years after that, a lot of things fell into place. A lot of things made sense. When I went to doctors, told them I had fibro, it was a little bit easier to get, them to listen, just because I had this diagnosis and whatnot. But there were some things that weren't explained, and one of them was the dislocations and the looseness of my body. I had always chalked it up to being a dancer and pushing myself way too hard from a very small age. I mean, I started as a ballerina. Like, I was on point by the age I was 8. And by the time I was 9, I was retired from point, because my feet weren't made to do that shit. And I got,
Yeah, I don't think it's made to do anybody's body. I think it's totally unnatural.
Permanently wrecked my right foot from ever being on point again when I was 9 years old, and that was done, KO'd. But we had teachers who would push on us until our bodies bent the way they wanted us to. And if you push on my body enough, it pops out. And so I would just be popping out, and then I'd pop it back in. And for a long time, a few of my joints, I was like, this is a party trick. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
It wasn't causing me pain yet. I was so young, and I was so active, and I was doing so much that I really didn't feel my pain until I was laying down in bed at the end of the night. And then my parents were always like, it's growing pains. But it was really like, you're pushing yourself way past your limits.
Yeah.
But I would do it all the time. And it wasn't until I got to high school and was in volleyball, which is like, spike and everything, like, that's when it really became a problem, because anytime I would try to come down for a spike, it would come out at the top, and then obviously I would have no force. It would just be dead weight coming down, so the ball would just And
Oh my God.
it was super painful, obviously. So I was in physical therapy for that, and my physio was just, he kept like trying to figure it out. He's like, I've never seen this before. Like, why is it like this that I can't get your shoulder to freaking stay in place? Like, what is going on? And he couldn't figure it out. And we just were like, maybe if we strengthen the muscles around the joint, that'll help. And that was kind of the plan for like years and years and years. Just strengthen the muscles around the joint, whatever. After that, I went to my school for acting. And when I was there, I did a bunch of other injuries. I had a hip that was popping in and out, whatever. But I started dislocating my other shoulder. And that's when I was like, okay, this is weird because I've always had this shoulder pop out. That's a party trick. And I've always had this hip kind of iffy. That's a party trick. Now I have this shoulder, like that's too many joints now to have problems with. And then it just started to add up. I was like, wait, is my spine a joint? Because that has problems. I was like, wait, are my ankles joints? Jesus, like what's wrong? And I knew that there was something up, and I wanted Fibro to explain it, and it can't. But a lot of people in the chronic illness community, like at this point, I had my page. It was Medical Mary Beth at first, and I started
Not a sexy name at all.
I started it in 2021, I think, right after the pandemic, or right after the lockdown. Pandemic's still going on. And there were a lot of people who had crossover diagnoses with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. And so I'd also known someone in college who had EDS, and we had always kind of like bonded over our similar issues, but I didn't know anything about it. So I started researching and started bringing it up to my doctor when I would see them, and then like they would refer me out to other doctors, and eventually we got to a place where I was diagnosed with hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome because of the physical tests. I am still waiting to get my genetic testing because unfortunately there are only 2 clinics in Florida that offer it, and they're both 3+ hours away from me. So, and like months-long wait lists. So I'm waiting for that, but hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome isn't found on a genetic test. So really the genetic test is to rule out anything more serious that I might have. I have all the qualifications for hypermobile.
Yeah, I mean, you sound exactly like what you should have.
Yeah, exactly. So no
You can't be
doctor,
mistaken for anything else.
no doctor is like iffy on my diagnosis. They're like, no, yeah, you have this. Like you have it. And so that was a relief also, finding that out, because I had these question marks with my fibro diagnosis of just like, this doesn't make sense. This can't all be explained by this. And then pretty shortly after my EDS diagnosis, because I had the diagnosis on my chart, I was able to get more imaging and more doctors to take me seriously. And I finally got the herniated discs in my neck diagnosed. So that was nice. And because I got those diagnosed, I was able to get a referral to pain management, which if you just have fibro, you don't get pain management. I mean, in my experience, I was never offered or allowed to have pain medications. I had shots, but they were like numbing shots for like they weren't like nerve blocks. They weren't what I'm offered now. Like they were the bare minimum, and then like acupuncture and like chiropractic and Reiki, and I was like, great, thank you. But having EDS in the medical field is more serious, I guess, and more well known, even if it's not actually in reality. I feel like the fibro affects me more on my day-to-day than the EDS does. But if having EDS is what it took to get treatments for my pain that is caused by fibro, then it all kind of works out, I guess.
So, like, what's more painful for you, the fibro or the EDS?
I would say the fibro, because it's hard to say because I don't technically know what connective tissue feels like. So the pain that I associate with fibromyalgia is that corset of pain, cavity, fire feeling. And that is like runs through my body tip to tip. Like it doesn't matter if I have an acute injury, it is just there. And it gets worse with stress, with eating bad foods, with obviously if I hurt myself, if I get sick, all of these things. And it's just like horrible pain, full body, and it's debilitating. But the fibro also causes me to have migraines and stomach problems and TMJ and urinary problems and gynecological problems. Like it causes so many other issues. Like there are over 200 symptoms of fibro. So it's a toss-up. They both suck.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why there's such a lot of question marks behind fibro. Just as a mindfuck right there.
It is. And it's fibro was thought for so many years to just be a catch-all disorder for hysterical women. And unfortunately, now people who are in medical school now and who have been in medical school for like the past 10 years or so have a better understanding. But if I show up to a doctor's office and my doctor is 60 to 70 years old, I will likely leave because that doctor will have learned about fibro as this catch-all hysterical woman fake diagnosis. And it wasn't a medically backed thing until more recently, but now it is. And like now there is research, there are studies. Unfortunately, because it has that bias, there aren't enough studies. There aren't enough people who are taking it seriously and who are committing their lives to figuring out what the fuck fibro is. And I always said, I like always joked around with my parents. I was like, you're able-bodied, go to medical school, like figure this out for me. I would go if I could, but that's the duality of it, right? Is that someone who is struggling with fibro in a big way couldn't do medical school.
No, so let's do a scene change, I guess. Enter some improv here, if you're cool with that.
Yeah.
So should we do the next session, but we talking sarcastically?
Sarcastically?
Yeah? Cool with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do this. So, 1 second. So let's do... Is spilling coffee a symptom of fibromyalgia?
Yes. But honestly, that's not sarcasm.
No.
Being shaky and having nerve issues or neurological issues that cause you to drop things is a symptom of fibromyalgia.
No, I mean, just pretty honest, not understanding she had like a whole, I don't know what you call it on Instagram, but like a whole story.
A highlight.
Yeah, there you go, highlight. Just a whole highlight of her just spilling coffee on herself like a sitcom or something.
It's just that it happens so often, and for so long I was in denial. And I live in Florida. It's hot in Florida, and people wear white clothes.
Yeah, like what are you doing drinking hot coffee in Florida?
Also that, but like the white clothing is what I'm talking about. Like I'm wearing white pants right now. Like why do I do this to myself? This is my own problem. I need to only wear brown clothes, and that's why my whole feed is also brown.
Yeah, I mean, they should also invent coffee that's white too. Like,
yeah,
it's kind of it's a little coffee's a little racist, I guess. There's no white version of it.
Yeah, this is a blonde latte, so it's lighter brown.
Okay, bro. We're getting to a better shade of different colors. Okay. Then we need like a yellow version of it, and then like a Latina version of it, like an Ariana Grande version of it. But I think she's Italian though, so kind of. Is she Greek?
I have no idea. Grande is Italian. It has to be.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, but the Italian can kind of be a mindfuck because it's how to look it up. Because some can be really white and some can be really, really dark.
Yeah.
And you don't even know. They can like pass. If you're watching the Ariana Grande, hello.
Hey, girl.
Oh, she lives in Boca.
Where's Boca?
Boca
Florida?
Raton.
No way.
Do you not know where Boca Raton is in Florida?
No, I do, but I didn't think you were talking about Florida. I felt like I would have known that.
Oh, yeah. That's why Italian descent, yep. Ameri- Italian American with a Sicilian and a Buddhist roots.
Sicilian. Sicilian.
Yeah, I mean, Indian? Did you say Indian?
No, I said Sicilian. Sicilian. Come on.
Oh,
Keep up.
yeah. Nah, yeah, that's okay. So, I mean, that would make a great episode as someone to get kidnapped during an episode.
That would be great.
Yeah, I always root for someone crying during an episode or getting really emotional. Anything that'll get views.
You haven't had a crying episode yet?
Oh yeah, I do. But I always like going into the episode. I'm always rooting for a crying moment. I don't want to, but in terms of
You're like, yes,
content, entertainment, I'm like, yes.
Content.
Yeah, when they're crying, I'm just like, yeah, they can make a great thumbnail right here.
I'll give you a great thumbnail. Just splash some water.
Yeah. So you have fibromyalgia, but now, not from the research, from just talking to you, you have depression, anxiety, which I believe, but I also don't believe, just because you're doing all these insane anxiety-induced things. And then, so what, and EDS, so what disease do you wish that you wouldn't want to have?
All of them. Are you kidding? That's a joke.
I mean, you gotta choose one though. You gotta play the game here.
Really? Get rid of one? Fuck, marry, kill, but my diagnoses?
Well, I don't know if you want to fuck any of them though.
Probably fuck bipolar. That bitch is crazy.
I mean, that's 2 in 1 right there.
Right? If I had to get rid of one, I think I would get rid of Fibro. But that's hard to say because, again, like I said before, Fibro did save my life. But if I didn't have Fibro, I wouldn't have had...
You wouldn't be needing saving, though.
Yeah. So, I don't know, though, because if I didn't have bipolar, maybe all of it would be easier because I wouldn't be so hard on myself and so prone to, sadness. That's a really tough question. I do not know the answer to that. But the weird thing is...
It's gonna keep you up at night tonight.
It is, but I'm not, EDS is not at the top of the list, and I think that's because, to me, it hasn't been my primary diagnosis for so long that it's still an afterthought, and I still don't really know what is EDS and what is Fibro, so it's very tough. It's very tough.
Well, I mean, that makes total sense. I don't even know what...
If I didn't have to have any mental problems, that would be really good, though. That sounds really nice.
Well,
no executive dysfunction from the bipolar, no depressive bouts, no suicidal ideation. That sounds dope. So, all right, bipolar, number 1.
I mean, okay. Is this from talking about other people with bipolar? I know when you have the good times. You're in go mode and you just do a whole lot of cool shit. You're just the most energetic and entertaining and goal seeking and the most fun you ever have until you just break down.
Yep.
And it's almost like a psycho-ish kind of way too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, because there's 2 types of bipolar. I don't know do you know that?
Yeah, there's type A and type B.
Type 1 and 2.
Oh, yeah. I want to try before, I think type 2 is when you have long periods of mania and then long periods of depression. And I think type 1 is just... I'm not even sure what type 1 is, but am I right or am I...
So it's more that type 1 has more of a tendency towards mania and the ability to go into a psychosis. And type 2 is more prone to depressive episodes and there's no psychosis. So it's just high highs, but not as high as bipolar 1 and lower lows than bipolar 1.
So which one do you have?
I have bipolar 2.
So you
So
have more.
I have more hard, sad times than I do fun, manic times. But I've never been in psychosis. So that's
So what
good.
is psychosis then? I'm
Psychosis
confused with
is when
that.
you lose your mind, like literally, like you can't form really coherent sentences, you don't make a lot of sense. I mean, these are the people that like are filmed acting crazy, like taking their clothes off in public. Like those are usually people in a psychosis because you can be in like a meth-induced psychosis, a crack-induced psychosis.
Would
So like,
would it be someone like Amanda Bynes that was found on the
yeah,
street naked?
yes, psychosis. Yeah,
Okay, I mean, okay, I didn't. Now it all makes sense. I didn't.
yeah.
Okay,
So bipolar can be like when you have bipolar one, it is very serious. You have to be so vigilant about taking care of it. And the
yeah.
problem with bipolar and with, most mental health disorders is that when you feel good, when you're manic, you don't take your medication because you feel good.
Yeah,
And then you crash and burn and have to start all over again with medication. And it is an exhausting cycle.
yeah. You need like a regimen,
Yeah. Yeah.
like a
It's
strict
and it's
regimen, regardless of
taken
what you're going through.
years.
You need to stick to it.
Yeah. And I think people, like, I even forget sometimes how disabling the bipolar is because I consider my disability to be Ehlers-Danlos and Fibro. I don't consider bipolar the same way, but it is disabling because there are things that I simply can't do when I'm so depressed, and I stop taking care of myself, I stop being able to feed myself, I stop bathing, like all these things when I'm in this like super low, super low depression that are things that a normal, healthy, mentally well person would just not deal with, would not experience.
Yeah, so it's just talking. So it seems just like going through your stories and like stalking, like trying to find information out, as
Yeah.
I call it. So it seems that the fibro is more of a consistent pain for you. Like yes, you'll have some days that are worse than others, but it's
Mhm.
more consistent. And then EDS is kind of consistent, but it's also really not as consistent. But you can kind of like understand it. But bipolar is very unpredictable. That you really have no idea if you're gonna be manic for a day or a week or months,
Yeah.
or
But
and then if you're yeah,
like the contrary to that is that bipolar is my most well managed disorder. Um, it's the one I have the best medication for. It's the one that currently affects me the least because I am on the proper medications and have been for the past over 6 months. So in that sense, right now, I would be like, oh yeah, get rid of either Fibro or EDS because I have the bipolar under control. But I'm
hmm
like thinking back to when I wasn't medicated or when I was having a really hard time keeping on track with my medication. Honestly, what really, really changed the game with that was moving back in with my parents as an adult and being treated like a child because I needed that. I needed to be babied, I needed to be like taught like a child how to take care of myself, baby steps, like how wake up and brush your teeth, shower at this time, eat 3 meals a day, like basic stuff that I really, really needed help with.
I mean, I feel like all adults need like to do that because a lot of people are just skipping meals and like
It's true.
not
Surviving on
showering.
coffee and nicotine, I see that all the time.
It's a regimen is important. I think the pandemic has fucked everyone now, and everyone is just like,
Trying to
I mean, I don't
survive.
know. I think also it's that we're adults too, so kind of like some people let ourselves go, and some stick to a regimen. But I always like I don't know. People like hate me all the time for saying it, but like I feel like everyone needs to stick to a regimen. If we don't
No,
stick to
it's
one,
fun.
you can't like do shit. Like
Yeah, I
I'll
don't know.
talk to like friends with like depression, and I'm like, she keeps saying like, oh, to live like a free life and stuff. And I'm like, you need a regimen, or you're just gonna fall apart.
A
Like
regimen
I
makes you
understand.
have a free life. Like That's how I
Yeah.
look at it. Is like if I didn't have this regimen, I would be constrained by my bipolar. Like it gives me the ability to be free if I stick to
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, like I agree with you. It's like like she sees it like it's a form of control, but it's like you need it. I think everyone needs regimen. I think there are very few people that can actually be alone and like able to do things for themselves. But I think everyone needs a regimen of waking up at the same time and eating and all that. Cause you gotta train your body, and it's also the other thing of like, even though if your body's telling you something, that doesn't mean you have to like listen to it. So if you're like, I'm just gonna throw the fast subject into it. I'm not sure what's your opinion on it, but like if you're eating, if you're fat and your body telling you're hungry, it doesn't mean you have to listen to your body hunger and like eat more. You could just not eat because you have like your body kind of sucks that like you have to think with your brain of like you do have enough weight on you that you could like live on an island with no food for 30 days and you're good to go.
I don't think that's how that works.
No,
I
but
don't think a fat person could just not eat and then be okay for a long time because they're fat. I don't think that's how that works.
I mean, yeah, but like, I'm just trying to give like a more extreme example. Like, if you watch the show Survivor, they barely eat for 30 days and they see huge weight loss,
Yeah.
you know?
I think it's again, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with you on that, but I think it comes back to the mind body connection and the ability
Mm-hmm.
to separate them. A lot of our actions throughout the day, a lot of just what makes us who we are is drawn by our mind, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
some of it, because of the situations that we are in, are driven by our bodies more than the average person. But the majority is driven by our mind, and we have more control over that than we think, which is why meditation
Hell
is
yeah.
so fucking productive and why people see massive changes in their lives once they start meditating because it's like harnessing your brain power. It's taking control of what you think is the uncontrollable. It's turning the subconscious into the conscious. And those are things that need to happen. Like I had what was suspected to be endometriosis, and I may still have endometriosis, but I have dulled the experience of the pain in my abdomen so much by so many degrees that I don't even consider myself to have endometriosis or like suspected anymore because I don't have this sensation of pain. And because I was able to relax muscles that I didn't even know were tense, that had been relaxed or that had been tight for years and years and years and years, using my mind and being able to get into my body through my mind, which I don't know, maybe I sound crazy, but
You,
that's what I
you
believe.
sounded crazy the first minute we started speaking, but let's go.
You got that right.
Yeah, so like you mentioned before that you're like a life coach, and I think you're a good example of like you're being like in a pile of like shitty emotional and like mental health, and then you were able to like climb out or dig your way out, and now you're like totally leveled, or you appear to be leveled to everyone around. Yeah,
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 I
I
think
got you.
I definitely want to make it clear that I don't consider myself on the other side of it. And I think if I were on the other side of it, I wouldn't be as helpful to people. I always used to think before I started coaching, I was like, I can't do that because I need to be better before I start. You know, like I need to be
Mm-hmm.
on the other side. I need to have overcome this before I start helping people. And then I was like, there it's chronic, bitch. Like fucking accept it. And you you are going to be able to help people because you are in the situation that they are in. You are still struggling with this. This is still an everyday thing that it's the first thing on your mind when you wake up. It is the last thing on your mind before you go to bed. It is a constant all day thing. And I don't want to hide that. I don't want to glamorize that, you know, like on my page I try to be as real as possible while also being like, yeah, if you saw me on a day where I'm out and about, you would have no idea that I have
Mm-hmm.
anything wrong with me. And that's just a fact. That's not
Yeah,
something.
like we were supposed to do an interview yesterday, and she had some something happened that she couldn't do anymore, and
Yeah.
that's unfortunately what happened. So I did call her on a better day.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like
Uh,
a lot of people think because they see me like somewhat regularly, or if they've seen me a few times and I always seem fine when they see me, that I'm fine. What they don't see is that I go out like maybe twice a week, maybe three times a week of my house. Like when you see me out, it's because I'm well enough to be at my best. And if I'm not at my best, I don't go out.
mm-hmm.
So you don't see me when I'm not feeling good because I won't be out and about.
Yeah.
And if I'm not feeling good, it's not necessarily that I isolate, but I'm more comfortable being alone because I like being alone. I like my own company and I don't have to like cater to anyone else when I'm in massive amounts of pain and physical discomfort. So I prefer it.
Yeah, so like you are a support person for other people, and you obviously support of yourself that you know what's best for you. So the question is, who do you go to for support?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that because I think it is important to highlight that as something. When I first started coaching, I didn't realize how much it was going to take from me, that
Mm-hmm.
giving and giving, as good as it feels and as passionate as I am about it and how much I want to do it, it is hard. It's emotional labor. It's,
Mm-hmm.
you're really giving yourself, you're opening up yourself up to someone and you're allowing yourself to receive what they're giving, and you're stepping into their shoes and trying to take on their situation. And just because you hang up the call or you say goodbye, you are still left with those feelings. They don't go away. You've still had that experience. You've still heard terrible things. You've had to take in terrible things. And I was like, what do I do with all of this? Where do I put it? And who's going to listen to me now? Like, who do I talk to? I'm going through all this stuff, and now I have all these other people's stuff also on
Mm-hmm.
top of that. So, my mom is the first person I'll call is my mom. She is a counselor and just an amazing person
I
to
mean,
talk
that's
to
perfect job
for a
for
mom.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my dad he's not the person I go to for like emotional stuff, but he's the person I go to for when I need a logical answer, because he always uses his brain and he is logical and even keeled, and I can always count on
He
him.
doesn't care about your feelings at all. Just
He's just like, let's just put those to the side for a second, think about the facts. And then my best friend in the world, David, he's been my best friend for 10 years. And if my mom doesn't pick up, I call David. And he would be my emergency contact if he didn't live in fucking New York City, halfway across the country.
oh shit. Okay, I'm gonna be friends with him now then.
Yes, should. He's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I feel you. The whole mental health game is it. I mean, it's kind of toxic. I know it's for a job, but it's also kind of toxic because like you're clearly dealing with a lot of your own shit, and like you want to have like the capacity to handle someone else's shit just to like help and stuff and do that. I mean, just similar with the podcasting and all that. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's safe with you, and it's pretty hard to like not. It's pretty hard to not absorb it because it has to affect you, and you're also giving yourself out too, and it's like exhausting. It's like you're kind of repeating the same traumas like over and over again.
Yeah.
And like I'm glad I'm like drinking throughout the episode just to get to this episode, you know. I guess.
Your 10 a.m. drink.
Yeah, I
Starting
gotta
early.
get through the day. I got a whole day left to go, so I gotta keep
Jeez.
this. I gotta
Uh,
keep myself in the
keep it up.
limbo state of what more shit do I have to deal with for the rest of the day.
Yeah. But yeah, so to speak to that, I think people who are trained to have, to be therapists, to have this as their full-time job, they have the training, the schooling to handle everything that they're being told, to give back, and to also still be able to fill their own cup and not feel like they're giving. And when I started getting sick in college, I switched my focus and got it and double majored in applied psychology because I was fascinated by the human brain and the mind-body connection. And I also was like, maybe I want to be a therapist. Like if I can't be an actor, what am I going to do? So I just was like, let's go for it. And my plan was to get my PhD. After I graduated college, I was like, I'm done. That took so long. It took me 5.5 years to get through college because of my illnesses, and I kept having to take time off and whatever. So I was like, no more school for a while. I need a break. And I worked in the field at a rehab for a little while. I worked at a behavioral health clinic for a little while and realized that I couldn't do this full time. And I don't life coach full time. And I know that for myself. Like, it takes a tremendous person to be able to handle the emotional labor of full-time therapy. And this is why therapists should be in therapy. And like any therapist you talk to will agree with me on that. But like,
yeah, imagine all the shit they hear on a daily basis.
Yeah. And that's why when I start my, sessions with people, I always tell them my background, what I have degrees in, what I'm certified in, what I can do and what I can't do. And I think what what I can't do piece is so important to illustrate. Like, these are the things I will not be able to help you with. It's out of my range of what I can do for you. And I don't claim to be a therapist. I don't claim to have a counseling degree because I don't. I have a psych degree and I have a life coach certificate.
Okay, so before I take the mic away from you, is there anything you want to say? Promote any words of wisdom, the winning lottery numbers? The mic is all yours.
Well, follow me on Instagram, MB Marshall. I'm also on TikTok, MB Marshall. And just, be well, be happy, dive, drink some coffee, don't spill it. If you do, film it, send it to me. It's funny. Oh, and come see my improv shows. We're called Love and Fire Improv. And I'm going to be performing in the greater Tampa Bay area starting at the end of April. So come see us.
Oh, yeah, that sounds nice. I kind of want to go, but I live in New York City. But, yeah, so thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, MB, for giving me your time and expertise. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. I'll see everyone next time. Bye.